Welcome to Coffee and a Chat. So today I want to share with you a story about a man that I knew many years ago. His name was Bill. And I don't remember exactly how I met Bill and his wife, but I do know that one of the first things we discovered, that Bill and I discovered about each other, is we were born on the same day. And we have one of those birthdays that we just haven't met a lot of people born that day. And well, we were born on the same day. We were born 19 years apart. Bill was 19 years older than I was. And he was just a precious man. And I remember him sharing his testimony and how he had spent a lot of years not knowing God, not walking with God. And, and he described himself as this really mean, tough, foul speaking, man. And I couldn't picture it because the Bill I knew loved Jesus, had the sweetest, kindest, most tender heart, and was the delight of his wife for sure. And so anyway, if you've watched some of my past videos, you'll know that I've been through a lot of dark times in my life. This is true. But there was one particular time, which is at this point a little over 16 years ago, went through the darkest thing I've ever been through in my life. Very dark. It almost did me in. Very close, very close. And so it was during this really dark time of my life, and I had been diagnosed with pretty severe. Hello, Sheba. Yes, I've got dogs. And she's wanting who knows what. Oh, and Samson's going to join her. We'll just ignore them because this is real life. Or just here. Good girl, good girl. Love on them a little. Okay, so during this this was still pretty early into my dark time. I had been diagnosed with pretty severe PTSD. They thought I'd been suffering from PTSD most of my life, which is probably true. And because my life has just been one trauma after another. And it's only by the grace of God, you guys, only by the grace of God that I'm still here, and that he's taking these traumas and actually turned them into wonderful blessings. As I've been able to share some things, it's made a difference in other people's lives. And I will definitely be doing some videos on that, how God has used trauma in my life to help somebody else. And that makes it all worth it. Then it's okay. As long as it serves some kind of a purpose. All right. So I was still in a really bad place during this dark time, and I was homebound. I never left the house at this point because I was terrified and confused and wasn't sure how to navigate the world. The world was too overwhelming for me to go out there. And so I never left the house, and this was for a few months. But I never left unless I was going to a doctor's appointment. Otherwise, I just stayed home. And because, I was suffering pretty severe memory loss, and I was having flashbacks, and if you have been through this, and there's a good chance that, 1 in 9 of you or whatever have been through this, and those numbers are getting higher all the time, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. And you just hit this. Okay, I've got a dog going to hang himself on a cord. Don't want to do that because I love you. You're a good boy. Okay, so during this time, I got word that Bill had just been diagnosed with late stage lung cancer. And all of a sudden, everything I was going through, it just didn't matter. You ever have God do that to you, where your priorities, your perspective, everything just kind of changes in a moment? And I was married to my first husband at the time, and I told him, I go, I need you to take me to see Bill. I want to go pray for him. And this was a huge moment because this was the first thing where I kind of popped out of stuff for a little bit. And the fact that I wanted to go pray for somebody, because I was such a mess, and I cried all the time, and I couldn't stop. And it was really bad. But I was like, I've got to go see Bill. I want to pray for him. And so my husband, called and found a good time, which Bill was like, anytime, come now. And so we got me together and we went over there. Now, Bill knew that there had been some things that had happened in my life. Most people didn't know. They knew small pieces of it, of things that had happened in my life at that time, but they didn't know, nobody knew what was really going on, because there was other things that also happened at that time, and that's why it made it too much. And don't tell me God won't give you more than you can handle. I know he does. He will, or life will, but God walks with you through it. So anyway, we went over to Bill and his wife's home, and we went in, and there was a stool by the foot of the chair where he was sitting, and he was so weak and so fragile. He'd been sick for a while. I hadn't known it because I was going through my own thing. And so I said, I wanted to come pray for you. And he goes, oh, I would love that, honey. You come pray for me. And so I pulled that stool up by him, and I sat down there, and I put my hand on his arm, and I fumbled through the prayer. I don't even remember what I said. I remember thinking, I'm so far gone, so messed up. I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know how to pray for anybody anymore. But I prayed for him with the best that I could do. And when I got done, I stood up to go sit down in a chair. And he said, now, Angie, I want you to come back and let's put that stool in the middle of the floor, because I want to pray for you. Well, I didn't see that one coming. So his wife moved the stool into the middle of the floor, and I went and sat on it, and she helped him get up. And he came over to me, and he put his hands on my shoulders. And his wife put her hands on me, laid their hands on me in a good way, not a bad way. And he began to pray for me. And I told the story about distracted and focused, and how God sent focused to go tell distracted things that only God knew about him, right? Well, that's what happened in this moment. As Bill prayed for me, he didn't just pray for God to help me through my hard time, or, and he knew there'd been a death in my family, and, and he didn't pray for the comfort of that. No, he began to pray for the secrets of my heart, for those things that nobody knew about. He began to pray for the self-hatred that was filling me, that the enemy was lying to me about, thoughts of suicide. He started calling everything out that nobody knew but God, right? He called out very thoughts from my head. And I began to weep uncontrollably. And I couldn't regain. And Bill, just like a loving father, covered me with those prayers. And then when he was done, he went and sat down, and I was trying to pull myself together, and I was a mess. I was a puddle of tears. I was a mess. And if you know from some of my other videos, I don't like I don't like that to happen, and everybody to see the blowing snot and everything, and see the real raw pain in my life, because I spent most of my life with abusers who were, teaching me that you don't let anybody see that, and you keep the secret, so that they can keep doing what they're doing. And so my husband, he kind of recognized a couple things Bill had said, and he goes, look, you're just, you're touching on things that are just, she's not in a good way right now, and you're just touching on some things that are just really tender in her heart or whatever. And pretty soon I was able to speak, and I'm like, no, it's more than that. And I told him, you're speaking things that are in my heart, things that are in my mind that only God knows. And I said, you know, even just to come and pray for you, I go, I've been really having a struggle with the reality of God right now because I'm in the darkest place I've ever been in my life. And Bill, I'm very near death. I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I just spoke truth to him. And he goes, I understand. He goes, I'm very near death. And I don't know if I'm going to make it. And then I'm like, oh, but mine is nothing compared to yours. And he goes, yes, it is. He goes, it's the same. It may be different things trying to take us out, but it's the same. He goes, why do you think you're here tonight? He goes, we're both going through the same thing. We're both very near death, and we don't know if we're going to make it or not. But he said what he knew is whichever way it went, for him, he was good. He knew it. He had peace in his heart. So whether God healed him and allowed him to stay and have some more years, that would be great. And if God said, nope, I'm bringing you home, he goes, honestly, that would be even better. And so he goes, that's where I'm at. And he goes, I know you're really broken right now. I see it. God shows me. And he goes, but God's going to heal you. He's going to put your heart back. What you think can't be mended, oh, just you wait. And it's funny because that was like a little, around 16 years ago that Bill said that. And here I am all these years later, and I'm just really starting to see a lot of that come to pass, because God did do a lot of healing in my life back then, but it's been an ongoing process. And putting my heart back together, yeah, we're still working on that one. But God's doing it. And what Bill called out that night, things don't always happen just like that. Some things take a while. But I think the best things take a while. So the Lord, ministered not just to Bill that night, but to me. And it was like Bill and I there was something with God that we were experiencing that night that the other two people in the room could only be observers of. And so time went on, and I began to get better and to leave the house and to get back into life, not life as it had been. I had to find my new normal. And because there was a death that occurred in my life. I mean, I had lost my brother, a few weeks before everything crashed in my life, like 3 weeks before. He had committed suicide. And so I had already gone through that, which had already kind of put me in a vulnerable position. Then somebody else decided that it was okay well, I can't really say a whole lot because, again, I want to protect different people. But somebody else decided that was a good time to do some things that they shouldn't have done, and to talk about some things they shouldn't have talked about, and to basically just try to push me over the edge. And so that other person, that was the real problem. That was the real darkness that was going on in my life. But we just would say that it was dealing with the loss of my brother, because that helped the guilty person still look good and keep their secret, because that's what abusive people do. So anyway, I kept getting better. Bill didn't. So I believe it was about not quite a year later. And Bill called me up and he said, Angie, there's some things going on, and I'd like to know, is it okay if I just stop by for a minute to see you? And I was like, yes, anytime. Of course, absolutely. And it was a Friday. And so pretty soon Bill was there at my door, and his son was with him. I'd never met his son before. And he goes, my son's driving me. So, is it okay if he's here too? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Come in. Can I get you some coffee? Always got the coffee. And get you some tea, some water, whatever I had, is there anything I can get you? No, we won't be here but a few minutes. But he was actually there for about an hour. And so he came in and he sat down, and I was young enough 15 years ago that I could still sit on the floor and get back up afterwards. Can't do it very good now. Oh, how things change in such a short time. But anyway, I sat on the floor at Bill's feet as he began to share his heart with me. And his son was just kind of sitting off to the side and just kind of observing. And, So Bill began, he said, Angie, it's time for me to go home. And that's why I wanted to stop by here and talk to you. So he told me that he goes, they've told me that I'm going to die, but he goes, I know that's what's happening now. And he goes, I don't have very long. I don't even think I'll make it the week. But he goes, I just feel so cold all the time, even though this was like maybe August or something. He said, I just feel so cold all the time. Well, he and his wife were snowbirds, and they had a place down south that they always went for winter, right? And so he goes, we're going early. We normally wouldn't go this time of year because it's still, kind of summer or whatever it was. And he goes, but she's flown down to get our place ready, and my son is taking me down in a motorhome so that I can lay down, as we travel. And then he goes, I'm going to go down there where it's really warm, and that's where I'm going to go home to be with the Lord. He goes, I can die down there just as easy as I can die here. And he goes, and my wife said, where do you want to be? And he's like, I want to go down south where it's warm. So that's what we're doing. And so he goes, so I wanted to call and tell you, or come by to tell you goodbye. And I held it together somehow. And I wasn't a puddle of tears. I had a real peace. In fact, I almost felt a little jealous of him. Because it's like, Bill, you're going to see Jesus before the week's over. Very likely. And he goes, oh, yeah, I am. I was like, wow, that is amazing. And he goes, yes, it is. He goes, I've lived my life. God's been so good to me, and I'm ready to go home. So he sat there and he gave me his words of wisdom, right? Things that God had taught him over the years, things he'd learned, things that Bill wanted to leave with me from my own life to encourage me, kind of like what I'm doing with you guys a lot of times. You know that, don't you? And so then when he was done, and I sat there quietly for an hour and listened to him. Can you believe that? No chit-chat from Angie. But that's because what Bill had to say was way better than anything I could have said. So then he goes, okay. He goes, I need to go now. It's time to go. And so I'm like, okay. And he goes, this is the last time I'm going to see you here. Next time I see you, we'll be there. I'm like, okay. And I was giving him a hug goodbye, and I almost said, give Jesus a kiss for me when you see him. But then I thought, no, that's okay. Jesus knows, and I'll give him that kiss when I see him myself. And so I told Bill I loved him, and I thanked him for everything, that all his kindness and his gentleness and his listening to the Spirit of God and being obedient to God, that one night when I'd come over to pray for him, how that whole thing turned around, and it was Bill ministering to me and all. And he's like, it's okay. It's no big deal. He goes, we're just supposed to do what God tells us to do. That's all. He goes, all the glory goes to God. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But thank you for being obedient. And so his son goes, he goes, it was very nice to meet you. And I go, it was very nice to meet you too. He goes, when my dad wanted to stop by here, he goes, this is the only stop we're making to leave town. He goes, and when he wanted to stop here, he goes, I was even kind of out of the way, and I thought, why are we doing this? He goes, but I get it. And he goes, and I have a new appreciation for my father. So thank you for letting us come by. And I'm like, oh, anytime. My door is always open. And with that, I watched him go out and help him get his dad into the motorhome. And Bill drove off. And less than a week later, news came that he had got down to where they were going and got all settled in. And just a few days later, he quietly, peacefully, and joyously went home to be with the Lord with his wife by his side. And then I did break and cry that I'm not going to get to see him here anymore. But he told me that you're not going to see me again here. Next time I see you, we're going to be in heaven with the Lord. And I remember him saying, that when he had said that night about, if the Lord decides to heal me and keep me here a few more years, that's good. But if he says, no, it's time to go home, well, that's even better. You guys, I get that. Because I'm there in life now where when it's my time, that's a good thing. As long as he wants to keep me here, if there's still purpose for my life, something useful in me, then I'm good with that. And I'll stay and do whatever it is that he's asking me to do. And the more lives that can be touched for the kingdom of God, the better. The more fruit I can bear for the Lord Jesus Christ, the better. But when it's time to go home, that's the best. That's the best. Didn't always feel that way before. I think when I was younger, I was like a lot of people, you don't want life to be cut short. You want to still be here. But then as you get older and you get tired and you see some of the things in life you wish you hadn't seen, yeah, you can get a little more homesick then. So anyway, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I may be here a lot more years or just a few more days. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. See, as long as each day that I am here, I'm busy doing what he's told me to do, and I'm making a difference for him, then it's good. And then when it is time to go home, I'm ready. No regrets. All right. I love you guys. I'm just going to leave you with that. You have no idea how much you all mean to me, even though I haven't even met you, but yet a lot of you have contacted me, made comments and sent emails and stuff. And I feel like I'm getting to know you. We're just a bunch of friends, gals and guys, men and women, that we get together every day for a little bit just to focus on Jesus. Best part of my day. All right. I love you. You have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.